She rode a train for 9 days to marry a man she had never met, and the man waiting at the station that morning told her, plain as ranch coffee, the bride was not for him. $300. A stranger in St. Louis. Bess Calloway had signed the paper without flinching. She had not signed to be sold twice. Her father's debts would have followed her to any state. The train home cost more than the contract had paid her. A woman bought once was not, in the parlance of the frontier, easily bought back. What follows is the winter that almost broke her, the man who almost let her in, and a contract that meant something they had not agreed to. Welcome to the channel. I am glad you are here because the story you are about to hear is one of those frontier tales that gets under the skin and stays there. Tonight, we are in 1887 in a town called Cut Bank in northern Montana. The mountains are white by October. The cattle are lean. And a woman named Bess Calloway just stepped off the train with 1 suitcase, 3 letters, and a debt she could not pay. The Cut Bank station was a wooden shed and a platform, slick with the first snow of October. Bess stepped down before the conductor could offer his hand. Her boots hit the wet planks, the sound carrying farther than she expected. The air smelled of pine pitch. The mountains stood close, as if they were listening. She was 23, and not what the agency had promised. Her dark hair was in a single braid, her eyes green and practical. Her hands had been mucking stalls since she was 9. The agent had written that she was a refined young woman of education. The agent had lied. It had paid her fare. A man waited at the end of the platform, broad through the shoulders, silver threaded through his dark hair. He did not look like a man who could not find a wife. He looked like a man who had stopped trying. "Miss Calloway," he said, and offered his hand. "Hollis Marwood," Bess answered, and took it. His grip was dry and brief. "The rig is outside. I hope you are not afraid of cold." "I am afraid of debt. Cold is just weather." He almost smiled at that. The buckboard climbed for an hour before the ranch appeared out of the trees. A long main cabin with smoke coming from the chimney. A bunkhouse behind it. A barn. A corral. Fenced pasture running up into pine. And a man standing by the corral post, watching the buckboard come in, with the stillness of someone who had been watching a long time. Bess saw him before Hollis pointed him out. He was leaner than the widower, taller, with a face now mostly scar, starting at his left temple and disappearing into his collar. He did not wave. He did not step forward. He looked at her the way a man looks at a thing he has been told about and does not yet believe. "That," Hollis said as he reined the horse, "is Silas Crew, my foreman, and the man whose name is on the contract you signed." The world went very quiet. Bess heard the horse blow. She heard the leather creak. She heard, somewhere inside her chest, the small, clean sound of a thing she had been hoping for, breaking. "I beg your pardon. The contract is for Silas," Hollis repeated, patient, almost gentle. "I am the one who paid for it, but the bride is his." Bess turned her head toward the man at the corral. He had not moved. His hat shadowed his eyes. His hand rested on the top rail, knuckles pale. He looked, she thought, like a man who had lost the right to refuse. "You bought the wrong bride," Bess whispered. She did not mean to whisper. The cold took the voice out of her mouth and gave it back smaller. Hollis Marwood looked at her. Then he looked at the foreman. Then he did smile, slow and tired and very, very old. I bought the right one, just not for me. The line landed in the snow between them and stayed there. Bess sat a long moment on the buckboard. She thought of the $300 already spent and the debt that had bought her onto the rails. She thought of her father, dead 2 winters now, who had taught her to ride before he taught her to read. I will stay the winter, she said, to work off what was spent on me. After that, I go where I choose. Hollis inclined his head. That is fair. Silas said nothing. He turned back to the corral and began to mend a broken rail with his back to the buckboard, as if the woman on the seat were only wind. Bess picked up her suitcase. She stepped down into the snow. She walked toward the cabin without looking back at either of them, and the cold closed behind her like a hand she had not asked to hold. The first week, Bess rose before the cook and split kindling until the axe handle bruised her palm. She did not speak to Silas Crew. He did not speak to her. When they passed in the yard, he tipped his hat 1 inch, the way a man tips his hat to a fence post, and went on. She told herself this was a fair bargain. The contract was a piece of paper in Hollis Marwood's office, and the winter was a thing to be gotten through, like a fever. The first real cold came on the 11th night. Bess woke to the sound of cattle lowing in the wrong direction. The wind had changed. Snow was coming in horizontal sheets off the mountains, and the main herd was bunching up against the north fence, ready to push through it. She pulled on her coat over her shift and ran for the barn. Silas was already there. He had a lantern in one hand and a rope in the other, and he was swearing in a low, even voice at a yearling heifer that had tangled herself in the wire. I can hold the lantern, Bess said. He did not look at her. He nodded once, hard, and handed it over. For the next hour, in a wind that took her breath, Bess held the lantern while Silas cut the heifer free, tied her, and dragged her to the barn. His hands bled. His coat tore at the shoulder. He did not stop. When it was done, he stood in the door, breathing hard, and looked at her for the first time as if she were a person and not a problem. You did not have to come out, he said. You did not have to cut her free yourself, Bess said. Here we both are. Something moved at the corner of his mouth. It might have been a smile. It might have been the cold. By November, they worked the ranch without discussing it. They met at the fence line to count the herd, hands cold, breath white between them. They did not talk about the contract. They talked about a barn door that needed rehanging, and a man in Great Falls who owed Hollis money and was probably right to. One night, Marin asked Bess to bring a bowl of stew to the bunkhouse. Inside, Silas sat on his cot with his shirt off, cleaning a cut with a rag and a bottle of whiskey. The scar in the lamplight ran from his temple down across his collarbone. It was not a riding accident. It was a knife. She could see that without being told. He heard her. He looked up. He did not cover himself. You should not see that, he said mildly. I have seen worse on a hog, Bess said, and set the bowl on the table. Eat. You are no use to anyone if you fall off a horse tomorrow. He took the bowl. He ate. He did not say, thank you. He did say, after a while, without looking at her, my wife, 3 years ago, the same knife did her. Bess sat down on the cot opposite him. Sorry was the wrong shape for what had happened to him. What was her name? June, he said. She did not like the name June. I called her Junie. She let me. Bess nodded. She stayed an hour. When she left, the snow had stopped. The sky had cleared to a hard black, and Silas was still on his cot with the empty bowl, looking at a place in the air where no one was. You tell yourself, when you meet a man like that you are only working the same ranch. You tell yourself that the contract is paper, and the paper is in someone else's strongbox. You tell yourself these things because they are true. And then one morning in early December, you are standing at the fence line, counting the herd in a wind that wants the skin off your face. And he hands you his coat without being asked, and your hands touch for the second of a second, and you understand that you are in trouble. What would you have done? Stayed on the train back, pretended you did not feel it, or stayed exactly where you were and let the trouble come? The blizzard came on the second Friday of December, sideways, the way Montana blizzards do when they mean business. Hollis ordered everyone off the range. Bess and Silas were the farthest out, by the high pasture, and the line cabin was the only shelter within reach. They made it on foot, leading the horse, just as the light went out. The cabin was a single room with a cast iron stove, a cot, a lantern, a cache of dry wood. Silas lit the stove. Bess hung their coats. Their breath made small white flags in the lamplight. We are not going anywhere tonight, Silas said. Maybe not tomorrow either. I have been snowed in before, Bess said, in St. Louis, the blizzard of '79, 2 days in a schoolhouse. The teacher cried. I read aloud. The janitor proposed on the second night. Silas looked at her. You were a school teacher? For 2 winters, Bess said, until the school board stopped paying, until they stopped paying most things. He nodded. He did not ask the rest. The rest of it was a debt, and a father, and a contract that had put her in a single room with a man who had buried his wife with a knife scar across his chest. In the morning, the snow was up to the door. In the afternoon, with the stove burning the last of the dry wood, Silas told her the whole of it. The cattle raid, the wife who had walked out to stop them, the knife, that he had killed the man with his own hands, and Hollis had paid the judge, and no woman since had been willing to stand in the same room with him. Until you, he said, and you were not willing either. You were bought. That is also true, Bess said. She was on the cot. He was on the floor. I did not ask for you, he said. No, Bess said. I would not have asked for anyone, he said after a while. I would have stayed in this cabin every winter and been glad of the quiet. Would you? Bess said. Be glad of the quiet. He did not answer. He looked at her then, and for the first time since the buckboard, she saw the man under the scar. He was tired, hungry, and very much alive, and he was looking at her as if he were beginning, finally, to believe. On the second night, with the fire low, Silas reached across the space between them and took her hand. He did not say anything. She did not pull away. They sat like that until the lantern went out, and the dark was just the dark, and the wind was just the wind, and the trouble had come, and had not, in the end, been a trouble at all. Bess had been bought once and not bought back, in a country that would not help her. She had held a lantern for a man who did not know her name. The letting had cost him more than the knife had. In the morning, they dug out the door and walked back to the main ranch. Hollis met them at the yard with 2 mugs of coffee and a face that asked no questions. The cattle had weathered. The yearling heifer was heavy with calf. Bess drank the coffee. She looked at the corral where she had first seen Silas, and where, in the spring, the foreman would mend a different rail. She thought of St. Louis. She thought of the paper in the strongbox and the line in the snow. "You bought the wrong bride. I bought the right one, just not for me." She understood then that she had not been sold twice. She had been placed the way a fence post is placed by a man who knows where the wind comes from. Hollis had paid for a stranger in St. Louis because his foreman had saved his life, and the foreman had not asked for anything, and the only thing left to give was a future the foreman did not think he deserved. The contract was not a sale. It was a debt paid forward into a winter she had not asked for, and had, in the end, walked into on her own. And in the spring, when the snow melted off the high pasture, a man and a woman stood at the fence line together, her hands rough, his hands scarred, and neither said a word, because there was nothing left to say that the fence and the cattle and the cold could not say for them. Thank you for staying with us through this winter. If this story found you, you know what to do. Like the video, subscribe, and ring the bell. Leave a comment below with the moment that stayed with you. And if you have not yet, sit with the next one. It is about a widow who did not know she was a widow. Until the next range. Good night.